Okay, Wendy, the floor is yours, and I will be sharing your presentation.
Fabulous. Thank you, Kerry. Thank you, Catherine. Thank you, Julia. Well, happy International Women's Day, everyone. This is quite amazing and I can't really think of a better way to actually celebrate International Women's Day than with colleagues from around the world. I'm here today on Whadjuk land of Noongar Nation, the Aboriginal people of Australia, on land that was never ceded, and I pay my respects to elders past and present. I'm really pleased to be here and see the first steps, really, or some initial steps in TAFISA's work on gender equity as part of Mission 2030. And of course, it's not just through this seminar, but I know TAFISA is also working at the governance level, continuing to look at board membership, statutes and bylaws to create safe environments, as well as a myriad of projects related to women's empowerment. I'm very pleased to actually be involved in one of those in Oceania, in partnership with the Fiji Sports Association and TAFISA, a program looking at women's leadership through Sport for All, training the next generation of women in sport leaders in Oceania. And hopefully, COVID pending and international travel restrictions on, we will be able to get together towards the end of the year and progress that project. But I also take heart about what Catherine said, in that we are all through this time learning different ways to operate and to come together through an online mode. Today, I'm hoping to provide some insight based on my various roles working in government, community, and as an advisor to various organisations. And most of those organisations, if not all, enacted gender equity policies and programs to make a difference over many years. Of course, some have been more successful than others. I'm going to try and outline what I think is needed to successfully empower women, some of the challenges, initiatives that have been put in place, and then finish off with key learnings all in 15 minutes, so wish me luck. I can have the next slide. So we are, of course, talking about sport for all. And importantly, Kerry, you just need to hit it. Yeah, great, just bring them all up. It is, the one that I've highlighted there is the most critical, of course. It's open, inclusive, and it is for everyone. And we have all seen the power of sport in addressing a whole range of social issues. I was actually on a webinar last week. Of course, this time of year around International Women's Day, there are a lot of opportunities to gather together. And Australia's longest serving sex discrimination commissioner, who's travelled a lot internationally, made a comment that when she first arrives in a country, one of the first things she looks for is actually women playing sport, because she thinks it's a great indication of the level of equality in a country and to get a sense of women's position. And I would agree wholeheartedly. I think it does give us a really good insight. So where do we start? Next slide, thanks, Kerry. We start at the top. Women and girls need to be equally involved in all decision-making forums, in all areas of sport and sport for all, as board members, administrators, coaches, participants, not as tokens, not as the one that's there to make sure there's a woman in the room, but valued members. As Julia said, diversity is strength, and that's what we all need to be working towards. We need to be bold and be clear. We need to think about what needs to change and be clear. It's not women who are broken. We don't need to be fixed, but the system isn't working well enough for women. So how can we start to change that? We need a culture of inclusion. And I'll come back to culture because I think it's really critical, and there's certainly things happening in Australia around that at the moment. We need a culture of inclusion, of respect, integrity and stewardship. In Australia at the moment, there's been a lot of attention on sexual violence and systemic harassment. What's pleasing at this time is that the old and common historic response, women should be careful about what they wear, what they drink, where they go. There's now growing awareness that actually we need to be educating men and others to change their behaviour rather than just focusing on women. It's the culture that needs to change. And to create that change, we need to be intentional. We also need visibility. We need women out there in the boardroom, on the field, in the park, everywhere. We need to have that diversity. We need safe environments to be able to participate, to learn, to try without fear of judgment, harassment, or abuse. And of course, there's challenges in getting women involved in decision making. And I know Julia said that ITT have been working on this since 2003. And while making progress, challenges still exist. It's fantastic in that time to see how things have changed. And I think one of the greatest changes is reflected in the attendees that we have on this seminar, is the support that our colleagues, our men colleagues are providing. We need men who value and recognise diversity, because there are times where they need to be prepared to give up their seat at the table. I heard a comment the other day that really resonated with me. Equality can feel like oppression when you're used to privilege. And for me, that's about if you have always sat at the table and someone asks you to give up your seat, then that may feel like you're being victimised. But in fact, we all need to make decisions for the common good. We all, men and women, need to challenge the status quo. I'm really pleased to see I've got an increasing number of male colleagues who won't sit on boards that don't have equal representation, who won't speak on panels unless there's equal representation. They know full well that diversity means strength. Culture is critical. It's about bringing that change, and it's not easy, and there are hard things to be done, but having a clear goal in mind is what can make the difference. There's also, of course, in recognising that difference, valuing it. We have different communication styles, not only in terms of men and women, but also within different cultures. And we need to understand and appreciate that. I wonder how many times you've heard or even used the phrase, why do you have to be so emotional? Or the other side of the coin is, don't you have any emotion? And what that says is we often want people to be like us. We need to recognise that difference, there is value in difference, and start to understand the benefits of that difference. As well as working in sport, I've worked in gender equity in many areas, and I was working with women and men in trades, so plumbers and painters and bricklayers and carpenters, and there were some real communication issues. So we ran a communications workshop, and it was almost a translation workshop because it was like the light had been switched on afterwards. After that workshop, I kept hearing, but when you said, I thought you meant, and so there had been all this translation occurring. That workshop helped clarify the differences and sort out lots of issues. The other thing we need is women out there to be visible for girls. If you can do it, if you can see it, you can be it. Active women, all shapes and sizes. Many of you would have seen the UK Girls Can campaign, which was also rolled out in Australia and had great impact. But then there can also be a lot of challenges. Kerry, can you just, next slide? This one here, this image, this athlete is Taylor Harris, an extremely talented athlete. She's an Australian rules football player. And apologies to those of you that think this isn't football, but this is the Australian version. After this image was published, Taylor received an avalanche of online attention. Attention of the worst kind. Vile, derogatory, misogynistic comments. The AFL, the sport responsible, took the image down because they were concerned. What she did was actually say, no, I'm an athlete and this is actually me, my peak performance. I want the image back. This behaviour that's occurring around it is completely inappropriate. And she garnered support from others in the sport, men and women, that what we have here is a picture of an amazing athlete achieving astounding results. She challenged the language. I'm sure many of you have heard the term, oh, you kick like a girl or you run like a girl. What Taylor did is really challenge people to say, this is how you kick like a girl. She actually also participated in a kicking competition against other sportsmen and women in the same sport and beat lots of her male counterparts, all who showered her with great respect. So she called out the inappropriate behaviour, she reclaimed the language, she drew support, and since then there have been all sorts of programs around building on that language, kicking like a girl. Jump to the next slide, Kerry. One of the organisations that is very dear to my heart, Blue Earth Foundation, a community organisation in Australia, has been running programs providing safe, secure environments for girls and boys to really discover their full potential. And so here's a young woman in the north of Australia participating in the program, learning kicking. And this comment about the program is from a high school teacher. So a revelation to be an enhancement of student emotional and social well-being, building self-confidence and self-esteem, and providing girls and boys with safe places where they can explore all types of movement provides a really solid foundation and really creates opportunities for success. What's important to do that is to continually challenge and change culture. I'm going to show you another program that's happening in Australia, and we will play a little video, but just before we do, this program it's called Daughters and Dads Active and Empowered. And while the program is about using fathers to help encourage young girls participate, it's also really teaching them to view and interrogate and question the predominant culture that stops girls from participating in the first place. So Kerry, if we can jump to that short video, it's 2 minutes, and then I'll talk a little bit more about the program.
It's quite alarming that less than 10% of girls do enough physical activity, and body image and self-esteem are major issues. Daughters and Dads Active and Empowered is a world-first lifestyle program targeting fathers as the agents of change to improve their daughters' physical activity levels, sport skills, and social and emotional well-being. Running over 9 weeks, the sessions provide evidence-based parenting education, as well as rough and tumble play,
Apologies, everyone. I've just been told that you're not able to see the video, so bear with me a second as I try and reshare.
I'm just going to talk while you try and do that, Kerry, and just explain. I think one of the things that I love about the program is it's actually teaching both fathers and little girls about the construction of gender. And so that may seem like a lofty topic, but the sorts of things at the end of the day, it's basically getting them to think through society's expectations and challenge them. So the girls learn about things, the fathers learn about things, and then they come back and talk in the session. And so one day, one of the little girls, when I was there, they were asking, what have you learned since the last time and what have you done? And she said, my teacher asked for 3 strong boys to move the chairs. And I put my hand up and said, I'm strong and I can move the chair. And it's a really small thing, but she'd learned through this program that she was strong and that she was more than within her rights to actually tell people that. Any luck, Kerry?
Okay, let's try now, Wendy.
All right.
It's quite alarming that less than 10% of girls do enough physical activity, and body image and self-esteem are major issues. Daughters and Dads Active and Empowered is a world-first lifestyle program targeting fathers as the agents of change to improve their daughters' physical activity levels, sport skills, and social and emotional well-being. Running over 9 weeks, the sessions provide evidence-based parenting education, as well as rough and tumble play, sport skills, and fitness. The program has demonstrated profound holistic health benefits, including enhanced well-being, physical activity levels, parenting skills, and stronger bonds between fathers and daughters. I think a real key to the program's success has been the strong partnership between the university, Port Waratah Coal Services, and the Hunter Medical Research Institute, and this has been integral to the program's sustainability. We've actually also introduced a unique work integrated learning model whereby hundreds of student teachers have gained invaluable hands-on experience delivering the program, and it's an approved university course for pre-service teachers.
It's had a huge impact on me, and it's really changed the way I want to teach.
It's really taught me about gender equity and has really impacted on both the girls and the boys I teach in my day-to-day situations as a teacher.
It's honestly amazing to see the life-changing experiences that the dads and daughters have together and the benefits that come from it.
The program has secured around $4 million in funds, including a recent $2.4 million grant from the Office of Sport to scale up the program across New South Wales. And it's not just in Australia we're benefiting society, but internationally, Women in Sport UK are also rolling out the program across England. And that's really exciting because it highlights the global relevance of the program. It has just been so rewarding to be able to provide a program that has such powerful benefits to society, and particularly through strengthening the bond between fathers and daughters and affirming to dads that you matter in your daughter's life.
Fantastic. Thanks, Kerry. That's great. So if we can just jump back to the next slide, which is a quote from one of the fathers.
Outfit has a threefold mission. The first is really to say
Sorted. So that next slide is a quote from a father, and is basically talking about how his daughter is empowered. Through the process of that program, one of the things that became really apparent is how important language is. And if you can jump to the next slide, Kerry. One of the really interesting things is that the same behaviour is often interpreted very differently depending on gender. And so this cartoon is highlighting that in terms of the difference between being assertive or being aggressive. But there's all sorts of things, and within that program, that's really what the little girls and their fathers were learning about and experiencing, is having their eyes opened to some of how society sees them. It's thinking about, as we complement women in sport, we often talk about a tennis player you may all have heard of, Serena Williams. She's often referred to as a great female tennis player. She's a great tennis player. And so it's simple, but it's language changes that then say, actually, we value her as an athlete. We value her equally. There are some amazing, in addition to that, Daddy, there are some amazing programs happening all around the world. Kerry, if you can just flick to the next and almost last slide, because I know I'm running out of time. There are a myriad of women's leadership programs. And one of the things I'm really pleased about with the Oceania one is we're working both with leaders of tomorrow, but also men in the organisations to talk about how we can work differently together, because I think that's really critical. There are also festivals of female fitness, mentoring programs, gender equity courses, and much, much more. The critical bit, of course, and I think the success of programs that make a difference is both being clear about the goal, but also evaluating. So knowing whether or not we have actually made a difference. I'm just going to finish off. You can flick to the last slide. I'm sure many of you have seen this, yes, this one, seen this picture in terms of equality and equity. And I always like to throw it in because invariably people talk about things being equal. And so, yes, things being equal, everyone gets to stand on a box. But if the fence in front of you is actually taller, then there's no equity in what your outcome is going to be. There's, of course, lots of ways to get there, and we're seeing all sorts of fabulous programs and innovative approaches around the world. I just want to finish off with a story for me. So one of the other organisations I work with is actually Women's International Stone Alliance. So women working with traditional stone techniques. Those of you, actually many parts of the world, have seen stone structures, fences and buildings. And there are women, obviously, who also do that work. The international organisation is new. And when we were sharing information about it, it will come as no surprise to most of you that there was some feedback that said, why do you need a women's organisation? It's probably the most common question that ever gets asked when you set up something. If you're trying to increase women's participation, you often need to have something special for a while. So when that happened and when we were questioned, the first thing we did was nothing, actually, because we wanted to see what the community out there would come back with. And much to my delight, as expected, the world has changed. And so there were male colleagues out there who stepped in and immediately replied, you're why they need this. They actually need to be in a space where they feel supported. And if that means a women-only organisation to enable more women to come into the trades, then so be it, and you have our full support. And for me, that was very much about what we're about. For all of us, it is about working together to get to that point that Julia highlighted so importantly. Diversity is strength, and we can only get there working together. So thank you. I look forward to any questions you may have, and thanks again to TAFISA for holding this important seminar.
Thank you so much, Wendy. That was inspiring and empowering as always. Excuse me. Gaeton, can we keep everyone muted, please? Okay, so now we're going to open the floor just for a few minutes before we move on to the next speaker. But don't worry, if we don't get to your question this time, then we will be having a full open floor at the end. I'm just having a look. I can see a question here from Darlene Kluka. Darlene, are you wanting to ask Wendy, or would you like me to read the question? So Darlene has written.
How about if you just read the question, and then I'll hope Wendy can give me and the rest of us a fantastic answer.
Sounds good. And nice to see you, Darlene. So Darlene has written the programs that you have presented and discussed. Have you been able to evaluate and assess whether the programs are working. And she's written, please talk about the need for assessment and evaluation. Thank you.
Yeah. Thanks very much for the question and for highlighting that really important and critical piece, because it's one of the challenges that we have in all fields, and certainly in this one, that good intent is actually rarely the problem. There are all sorts of programs out there and ideas and initiatives, and it's great. But really what we want is an evidence base. We have scarce funds. There are never enough dollars to do everything we want. And so we always want to invest in something that we know is going to deliver results. So yes, Darlene, certainly the Dads and Daughters program particularly has gone through an extraordinarily rigorous evaluation. And it helps sitting in a university, where that's obviously a critical piece of it before it expands. Yes, the Blue Earth program has also gone through review and evaluation, and I'm trying to think of what other programs I mentioned. But yes, generally, I mean, I think it's a critical element, and certainly informs us about where to direct resources. There are times where you need to seed new things, but they need to still be based on foundation components where there's an evidence base. So thank you for allowing me to highlight that issue, because I do think it's very, very important.
Would it be
Darlene's got some comments.
You've been muted. Can you unmute yourself, please?
okay? Would it be there's a way to collect additional information we really have on point?
Probably what's the best thing to do is that I have afterwards the evaluation and the key components of what the
Thank you, Darlene, and thank you, Wendy. I'm looking at the chat box here, and I can see there's a lot of interest about the Daughter and Dads program, a lot of interest about people wanting to implement within their own countries. Of course, we will share your presentation with all of the participants afterwards, so they're able to learn a little bit more. I think for now, just to be conscious of the time, I would like to thank you so much, Wendy.